Colin O'Brady, it is a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for joining today.
My pleasure to be here. It's fun. I'm excited.
Geez, I think about a guy that I want to grow up and be like, and it's you. Some of the adventures you've taken, your history in triathlons. I'm like, this is a dude who thinks about a challenge that needs to be tackled, and then you actually do it. So tell me about your upbringing. I would love to hear how you kind of developed this mindset and more about how you got to where you are.
It's a good question. I don't know that you're just born on this earth and decide to just walk across Antarctica solo or do some of the other things that I've done. It's certainly been a progression, and I guess it's easy to sit here humbly with 10 world records, but I'll tell you what, there's been at least hundreds and hundreds of other mistakes and failures along the way to get here. So it hasn't necessarily been a linear path, but it's been fun. All the ups and downs, I like to embrace them all. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, but I was actually born on a hippie commune in Olympia, Washington, at home on a futon with 30 hippies hanging out, playing music, and my mom played a Bob Marley Redemption song on repeat throughout my entire birth. So you could say I came into the world in a slightly untraditional context. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. Family didn't have a lot of money when I was a kid, but big dreams. And mostly, people sometimes ask my mom at this point, all the stuff that I've done that, of course, has some inherent life and death stakes and risks associated with it. Like, you must be afraid as a mother. You must be so worried. And she's like, of course I'm afraid. But she goes, careful what you wish for when you tell your kid they can achieve anything they set their mind to since they were born, basically. So I guess that's what she gets for whispering that in my ear for so long. She gets some long nights worrying about me up in the mountains in the middle of Antarctica and various other things that I've done.
Have you always been into athletics and kind of like physical activities? Because it seems, you could have said, hey, I want to break the world record for Rubik's Cube solve.
That might be the next one, man. That might be the next one.
But it seems like you're drawn to the more physical side of things. What's your background as far as like athletics? Were you doing it in high school? Like, were you?
So I grew up, loved sports as a kid, very active kid. Played soccer and swam. Kind of growing up were those my two main sports. And then I was recruited to swim in college. So I swam at Yale, which was in the end a great education and great swim program, but definitely a big divergence from a public school kid from Portland, Oregon. That was sort of a whole different experience for me, some culture shock for sure, but ultimately a super positive experience for me at that point in my life. And then, it's been kind of a long winding path from that. I think, I know the show is about making pivots. I'd say there's a pretty specific pivot for me, graduating from college, 2006. Most of my peers, an economics degree from Yale, pretty much all my friends were like, I'm going to go into investment banking in New York City. That was like the one and only path. And it was like, everyone's like, this is so obvious, like so much money and prestige or, whatever. And I candidly looked at that, even despite the fact that I had no money, never really, had those kind of opportunities growing up. I was like, I don't know. That doesn't, my heart's not calling. That's not calling to my heart. And my peers thought I was insane. They're like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I've been painting houses every single summer, saved up a few $1,000s. And I think I'm going to go travel around the world for basically as long as these few $1,000s will last me, going youth hostels, hitchhiking around, sleeping on floors, shoestring budgets. And my peers just thought I was absolutely out of my mind. Incredible experience, not least of which is on my first stop, which happened to be a free layover in Fiji. I had like the cheapest student ticket, and they said you can stop over in Fiji for free on your way to New Zealand with like a long layover. I actually met my wife during that layover, so I'd say that was a win. And so we've been together for 15 years now. But a great adventure, but also an adventure that actually for me ended in a massive tragedy. I was on this small beach in rural Thailand in the middle of this trip, and 22 years old, not a fully formed prefrontal cortex, and I saw a couple guys jumping a flaming jump rope, and I thought to myself, gee, that looks like a good idea. Turns out, terrible idea. I lit my body completely on fire to my neck. The rope wrapped around my legs. I tripped on it, and it sprayed kerosene on my body. And I jumped into the ocean, extinguished the flames, but not before about 25% of my body was burned, primarily my legs and my feet, actually. And there was no proper hospital. I mean, I was on an island in the middle of rural Thailand. I had like a moped ride down a dirt path instead of an ambulance ride. I had like a one-room nursing station shack where I underwent like 8 surgeries. There was a cat running around my bed in this sort of like makeshift ICU. I mean, it was like not the best place to get this badly injured, that's for sure. And I know you kind of asked me about mindset a little bit. Like in this moment, I kind of thought I had a resilient mindset. I was strong. I was an athlete, all this kind of stuff. And this just crushed me, man. I mean, the physical pain was immense, but I'll never forget the emotional pain when the doctor walks and he looks at me in the eyes and he goes, "I hate to tell you this, Colin, but you'll probably never walk again normally." I mean, my legs were no skin on the lower half of my body. They thought in the way that the ligaments and ankle joints were burned, they thought, never going to regain full mobility. But again, I mentioned my mom already. She's been such a core role model for me in my younger period of my life, and still to this day, certainly. She arrives on day 4 or 5, and I can imagine as a mother, I mean, she was crying in the hallways, pleading for the doctors for good news, but she never showed me any of that negativity, any of that fear. Instead, she came into my hospital room every single day being like, "Your life's not over. What do you want to do when you get out of here? Let's dream." And I now call this, and I talk about this in my new book, The Possible Mindset. I call this a possible mindset. This mindset, which is an empowered way of thinking that unlocks a life of limitless possibilities. Even during setbacks, you're like, okay, this is a bad moment, but what can I do to get out of this? What can be the next thing? And so my mom kind of had me visualize. She goes, "Visualize anything." And I said, what do you see? And at first I didn't want to play along, but I was finally like, closed my eyes and I was like, all right, this sounds ridiculous, but I just saw myself cross the finish line of a triathlon. And that was an interesting moment because she could have easily been like, "Yeah, I said set a goal, but like, look at your legs. Like, you doctor said you're not going to walk. Like, take it easy." But instead she was like, "Great, actually that's your goal." And she yells over to the Thai doctor. She goes, "Hey doc, my son's training for a triathlon. Bring him in some weight." So I have this picture of me in a Thai hospital, bandaged from the waist down, the Thai doctor looking at me like I'm absolutely crazy, but I'm lifting 10-pound dumbbells and going, "Doc, I'm training for a triathlon." I share this story, kind of fast forward to the end. Many months later, I was released from the Thai hospital. I was in a wheelchair when I got back home to Portland, Oregon. I literally had to take months to learn how to take my first few steps. But I eventually moved to Chicago, tried to kind of get on with my life, took a job in Chicago to start what I thought would be my career. And I signed up for the Chicago Triathlon. And I raced the triathlon just 18 months after being burned in this fire, finished the race. And to my complete and utter surprise, I hadn't actually just finished the race, but I actually won the entire Chicago Triathlon. Applause. Which crazy. There's 5,000 people racing a day. My first race ever. I've been through this bad thing, but I don't tell that story to be like, "Oh, and the moral of the story is I was a superhuman athlete." The moral of the story is we have these turning points in our life. We have these pivots, as you like to call them. These, sometimes those pivots are forced on us. Sometimes we need to force that pivot on ourselves. But there's these inflection points, these moments. And the moment is not the win of the Chicago Triathlon. The moment is in that Thai hospital, in the depths of despair, in my mind, my body, my soul, having my mom have the gumption to again instill what I call this possible mindset, which extends to many other elements of my life, and prove to me that I can shift, that I can be better and stronger. And so when I look back on that experience, I go, I wouldn't wish the burn accident on my worst enemy, the pain that it caused me, the pain it caused my family, whatever. But I would also be remiss not to acknowledge that the recovery from that taught me some of life's greatest lessons, that we are resilient, that every human being, we have reservoirs of untapped potential to achieve extraordinary things in our life when we set our mind to it and we have that bright mindset. And so, the last, 10, 15 years of my life, becoming a professional athlete, setting these 10 world records in adventure, whatever, they all came after this accident. That's important to know. After this accident, after being told I would never walk again, I was actually even stronger in mind, body, and spirit. And I think that ultimately that's what a lot of high performance comes down to, is that mindset.
So who are you trying to talk? What lesson are you trying to teach, and to who? Like through all this, all these challenges you do, all these books you're writing, what are you trying to teach, and to who is your ideal audience?
Yeah, so I've written two books. My first book was called The Impossible First. It was a memoir of my solo crossing Antarctica. So I was the first person in history to complete that crossing. It was a memoir. Fortunate enough, it had some success. It was a New York Times bestseller, and it's really an edge of your seat, adventure story with all sorts of vulnerability, from everything of me getting dropped off in Antarctica alone, crying tears, frozen tears in my face, and this battle that I had both with my mind, body, spirit, as well as there was another guy who I was actually racing head to head 1,000 miles across Antarctica. And that kind of goes through my whole life and childhood and certain ups and downs and stuff like that, in a narrative prose. But the book that I have coming out right now, I'm really proud of the first book, but I'm so excited about this new book, which is called The 12-Hour Walk, because I'm also speaking directly to the reader in this book. Like I say, I'm not the hero of the story, you're the hero of the story. And through the book, I'll keep you entertained. Edge of your seat, adventure stories from Antarctica to rowing a boat solo across the Drake Passage to being alone in Pakistan on K2 in the middle of winter and unfortunately, losing some friends in a bad accident to climbing Everest. There's all sorts of elements of there that keep the pages turning. But at its core, this book is a book about mindset. It's a book for anyone who's feeling a little bit stuck at an inflection point in their life. The subtitle of the book is The 12-Hour Walk, Invest One Day, Conquer Your Mind, Unlock Your Best Life. And at its core, I'll tell the origin story of it. There is this call to action for any of us in a very accessible way to do something for one day, this 12-hour walk, and I'll explain more what that is, that I have seen fundamentally shift people's life in a positive direction in just one day. And it is a powerful, deep cut. But it's also accessible for anyone. So your question is, who are you trying to talk to? Is obviously I love people who love adventure, the armed trail traveler, the fellow adventurer, whatever, but that's not necessarily who I'm specifically talking to. I'm talking to human beings on this planet who are having a human experience. I use my experiences from my life to illuminate stories, but it's not like, I love to ask people, but what's your Everest? My goal, my Everest, so to speak, as a kid, like I always dreamed of climbing Everest, and I've been fortunate to summit that mountain twice now in my life. But I understand that's not everyone's goal, nor should it be, right? The question is, what's your Everest? What is your Everest? You make $1 million, save 1 million lives, family, entrepreneurship, love, creativity, music. It doesn't matter. The fundamentals of this book around mindset and how we can strengthen that and cultivate that possible mindset, something that I think applies to every single person. So what is the 12-hour walk? What is the 12-hour walk? Well, so when I was crossing Antarctica solo, like I said, I was racing this other guy, this badass Navy SEAL kind of dude at a UK guy named Captain Lewis Rudd. And he kicked my ass on the first day and the first week. So much so that, like I said, I was crying these frozen tears thinking that's embarrassing, I'm going to give up. But I encountered him on the 6th day when I was out there, and I thought I was pulling a 375-pound sled. So all my food, all my fuel was called unsupported, so no resupplies throughout the entire time, just mano-a-mano, dragging the sled 1,000 miles across Antarctica. And people have been trying to do this for 100 years. No one had ever completed it. People have died trying. People have had to be evacuated. It's kind of on the edges of what was thought to be possible. And part of that is this math equation of like, if you carry 1,000 pounds of food, you'll never be able to pull your sled. If you carry too little, you're going to run out. At the end, I had lost 30, 40 pounds. My ribs were sticking out. My hip bones were sticking out. I had frostbite on my face. I was beat up and banged up. But these 12-hour days, I eventually did pass Captain Lou. 10 hours was my maximum I thought I could go, until I encountered him out there on the 6th day, and he was still going after 10 hours. And so I was like, I'm going to go for 11. I'm going to go for 12. And I finally surpassed him on that day, but there were still 50-some days left. But I figured if I can go 12 hours one day, I can go 12 hours the next day. And when I was in Antarctica, I deleted all my music, all my podcasts, all everything, and I was alone in complete silence while I was out there. And at first, that was incredibly hard. But strangely, by the very end of the expedition, I found myself in these meditative flow states. My body, everything around me, this place, Antarctica, minus 40 degrees, 50-mile-per-hour winds in my face. Like, you would think this felt like this frozen white room that was trying to kill me, But I got over that fear, and I actually found these places of meditative flow, of strength of mind, of clarity, of connection to self, of connection to family, of connection to purpose, of fulfillment. I felt better, strangely, by the end of that than I've ever felt before. And I did complete the crossing. I became the first in history to do so. And you know, it was a incredible and very difficult journey. And when I came back, you know, there was a lot of curiosity, a lot of interest, a lot of press, a lot of media, you know, all the things. And people would always ask me about mindset and this. And I was like, look, like I found this place in my mind. Like I found this powerful place in my mind. And I thought that I had it, man. Like I thought that it was like, I have this to take with me forever. And that was true for a while. That was true for a couple years. I did some other big projects. I rowed a boat across the Drake Passage, first person to ever do that, 40-foot swells in a tiny little rowboat, icebergs, a crazy ass other adventure I could tell you about. But then COVID hit, man. Then COVID hit. Like we all remember the spring of 2020. And I went down to a pretty dark place in my mind. You know, after thinking, oh, I figured it out. I found this place. I found this bliss, like in my mind, body, and spirit. I was trapped in my house. All the things I had going on were canceled. Just like, you know, we have this common experience. I think most people had some experience around this. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty in that moment, a lot of fear. People are getting sick. People are dying. Like, what's going on in the world? The news, you know, the headlines of the news are just like negative, like scary every single day. And I found myself, I was with my wife and my dog at the Oregon coast. My family has a small cabin. And a couple months had gone by. We barely seen anybody else, right? Just FaceTiming family and just trying to, you know, figure out what the heck's going on. My wife looks at me and she's like, you know, you haven't changed out of your pajamas in 3 days. I'm like, yeah, why would I? You know, it's just kind of like, ugh, like just, you know, I think a lot of people can probably relate to that moment. But then I realized, I was like, man, I gotta shake this off. And I thought back, when was the last time I felt like kind of really connected, you know, unstuck, full of purpose, full of fulfillment? And I thought, strangely enough, it was walking across Antarctica, pulling this sled 12 hours per day. And so I said to my wife, this might sound ridiculous, but don't worry about me. Tomorrow I'm gonna get up early. I'm gonna go for a long walk, 12 hours by myself. And she was just like, looks at me like, okay, you know, have fun, whatever. So I walk out the front door. And I walk out the front door, and about 20 minutes in, my phone buzzes in my pocket. My friend of mine's texting me. And I instinctively reach down to my pocket like you do, pull it out to, you know, text my friend back. And I thought to myself, man, like, haven't I been like doom scrolling the news enough? Haven't I just been like staring at my social media and reading headlines and sitting on my couch? Like, I don't need my phone right now. And so I put my phone on airplane mode, just kind of instinctively, and continue the walk. I end up walking for 12 hours that day in stillness and silence. Take some breaks, just enjoy it. But I stay kind of in my own body, my own mind, no music, no podcast, nothing. And I get back to my front door. And when I get back to my front door, my wife looks at me and she goes, you're back. And I thought she was like, yeah, you're back. It's dinner time or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm back. And she was like, no, I can see it in your face. Before I even say anything, she's like, you're back. And I was like, you're right. Like, I feel better right now than I have felt in so long. This reset, this taking a moment, not to vilify technology, not to like become a monk or something like that. Like, this was just a moment to say, hey, I need a reset, you know, in my mind right now. And it was beautiful. And I thought to myself, okay, fine. I'm the guy who walked across Antarctica by himself for 54 days. So maybe it's just like something that works for me. But I got lots of other friends and family members. COVID's going on. People are telling me, hey, I'm struggling with this. Hey, I'm struggling with that. I'm stuck in my house. I'm this, that, the other thing. So I started suggesting it to people, all different people, young, old, my 77-year-old mother-in-law, etc. I said, hey, I took this 12-hour walk in silence and stillness, and it really reset things for me. And now there's been thousands of people that have attempted this. My ultimate goal with the book is to inspire 10 million people to take this walk, who have taken this walk. And every single person who has taken this walk, it is a fundamental mindset shift. It is a powerful reset. And I tell people, this is not an endurance challenge in terms of you got to train for it. This meets you right where you're at. It doesn't matter if you walk for 1 mile or 50. I tell you, take as many breaks as you want. This is not so much a physical challenge as it is a mental challenge. To take a day, to be aware in your thoughts. And I'll tell you what, you might find some dark corners, some dark edges, some challenges in your mind out there. For sure, when we allow our mind to be in stillness and silence, it can be tough. But I've never known somebody to walk back to their front door after this 12-hour walk to not feel gratitude, fulfillment, purpose. Actually, if they're in the middle of a lot of people listen to the show in the middle of a pivot or a transitional moment, it's a great way to reflect on what is the answer. There's a chapter in the book all about intuition and listening to that inner voice. And so at its core, you know, that's what the 12-hour walk is, man. There's a book. You'll love the book. But it's simple call to action, which is to say, take a day, put it on your calendar, put your phone on airplane mode, walk out your door, and I promise you the person that walks back in your door 12 hours later is going to be stronger, more fulfilled, more connected to purpose, and more ready to take on life's challenges.
Colin, what would you say to someone who's like, what about like a 1 hour walk?
Yeah. Look, I think walking is, I walk every day. I love it. That's great. I'm not going to say someone don't take a 1 hour walk. What I'm saying is what I found is there's this prescription of this 12-hour walk. It is very powerful for a couple of reasons. It requires you to commit a full day to it. It also requires you to go, it's long enough that it forces you to go through the arc of some challenges, right? At some point your feet get tired. At some point you get a little hungry, bring some food with you. And at its core, what the book is really about is about limiting beliefs. So there's 10 chapters in the book, and each one of the chapters breaks down one of the most common limiting beliefs that I've heard people say. I've said them to myself. I'm sure you've said them to yourself, that are holding us back, right? I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. What if I fail? What if people criticize me? I'm not strong enough, right? We all have that inner voice inside of us, myself included. And the stories and the message in the book helps you overcome those limiting beliefs. But at its core, the 12-hour walk in a somatic, experiential way, actually more than anything, allows you to get over all of those limiting beliefs. Meaning, you can read a book that's full of good advice and tips and tricks, but it's not your own experience, right? It's not your own lived experience, which is the 12-hour walk allows you to take what you learn on the page and actually apply it. And what I mean by that is, I always like to say to people that this moment right here is where the 12-hour walk starts. And you're like, what do you mean? I'm not at my front door, walking out my front door right now. I'm listening to a podcast, driving in my car, wherever you're hearing this conversation for the first time. And I was like, no, but you're hearing this most likely for the first time on this podcast right now. This is being suggested to you. And you're one of three people. You're either like the 1% of people who's like, hell yeah, that's the best idea I've ever heard. I've already bought the book and I'm putting it on my calendar. I'm doing it tomorrow. Okay, maybe that's some small percentage of people. And then there's the other far side of the spectrum where someone's like, this is the stupidest freaking idea that I've ever heard in my entire life. I'm turning this podcast off. I'm blocking Colin on Instagram, whatever. I want nothing to do with it. This is the worst thing I've ever heard of in my life. Hopefully that's a small percentage of people. Maybe there's a couple people out there. Most people fall somewhere in the middle in this moment in time when they're hearing it. They're going like, is this a good idea? Should I do this? Is this interesting? Would this help me? I don't know. But what happens in this first moment, like I say, the process of the 12-hour walk starts right now, is there are some level of bargaining that starts to happen in your brain, or some sort of limiting beliefs like, oh, this Colin guy, this is kind of a cool idea, but you know what, man, like I got a busy life, I got kids, I got a job, like I don't have enough time for that. Or I got to be honest, man, like I don't really like being uncomfortable, and I'm certain if I'm on my feet for 12 hours, even if I take a bunch of breaks, like my feet are going to be tired. Like I hate that feeling. I don't like being uncomfortable, man. When I say it starts right now is that this moment, hopefully you do the walk, but whether you do the walk or not, what I'm doing by suggesting this to you is I'm holding up a mirror to you. I'm holding up a mirror to your own interior dialogue, your own bargaining with yourself of your limiting beliefs. And that's super interesting. The reason it's interesting is you might think to yourself, well, that's just the limiting beliefs I'm applying to the 12-hour walk. Those are just like why I don't want to do the 12-hour walk. But if you're honest with yourself, and I've had this conversation with so many people at this point, the same limiting beliefs that knee-jerk response when you're suggested the 12-hour walk are most likely the same limiting beliefs that keep coming up over and over and over and over again throughout your life, that are holding you back from making the decisions to live your best life, or to make that switch, or to make that pivot. But what's powerful about the 12-hour walk is you have these limiting beliefs in your mind when you're first suggested to this, but you still put it on your calendar. You can do the 12-hour walk any day. I will say I'm organizing a global participation on September 10th. You're still alone. You're still from your front door. But there's thousands of other people around the world doing it. 12hourwalk.com. You can sign up on the website, pick a date. There's an app that helps support it, tracks your walk, all this sort of stuff. But it doesn't matter what day you do it on. What I'm saying is this moment of bargaining right now. But if you do pick a date, if you do put it on your calendar, if you do complete that 12-hour walk, what happens on the other side of that? Those same limiting beliefs that you apply to the 12-hour walk, they might come up next week when something else is suggested to you. Oh, I don't have enough time, man. And then you go, wait a second. Last time this came up for me, I had the same thought, but I decided not to listen to it. These are limiting beliefs. These are not limiting facts. These are not limiting truths. These are beliefs, and beliefs can be rewritten. And so therefore, when you do commit to it, when you do get back to your front door, what happens the next time that limiting belief comes up? It's a little bit quieter. You go, oh, hello, old friend. I recognize you. I don't have enough time, limiting belief. All good. I know that's just part of my mental process, but I've proven that I actually can prioritize my time effectively. I've proven that, outside my comfort zone is actually a good place to be because I grow from that. I learn from that. And so again, you asked about the 1 hour walk. Take a 1 hour walk if you want to. That's not the 12-hour walk. It's a different exercise. And the exercise of the 12-hour walk is the completion of a full day of stillness and silence that you're committing to.
Dude, I love this. And something about the way you phrase things in general, or this mindset issue, or the possibilities that we can tap into in life really resonates with me. And I'm at a phase where I'm 30 now and we got 2 young kids, and I've always been like, just sign me up for whatever competition, whatever challenge. I love it. I want to because every time I do one of these challenges, I find something out about myself, whether it's like, doing some triathlon or climbing a mountain. I have not done Everest, but I climb some 14ers every once in a while. But it's like, with 2 kids, I find myself not having the time to train for a triathlon, or not having the 5 days to go fly out to Colorado, whatever it is. And so it's like, this is what the pandemic, I think, revealed in a lot of people as well, where it's like you're just kind of in this mundane phase of life where there is no challenge to look forward to. There's no big event on the calendar for me, because it's like, hey, we're just doing the kid thing, right? And it's kind of like, step and repeat. But what I love about the 12-hour walk is like, it's not an Ironman triathlon. You don't need to train 4 hours a day for it for 6 months and then show up on the event like the day of. You just have to take a day and do the thing. And I challenge myself to break a 5:30 mile this year, which I've never done. I know you're probably laughing.
No, that's legit, man.
I'm 220 pounds. So
that's
I'll
super legit if you're
220
pounds, man. That's flying.
But I ran a 5:36 as part of my training the other day, and I was on lap 3. And I was thinking, I was like, man, at this point, like, I'm on pace. I could just stop now and like know that I could do a 5:30. Like, I don't have to continue training for this, or I don't have to continue like doing these miles. I know that I can, right? I'm this close. But then I was like, no, I'm missing the point. Like, you actually have to go through the exercise to get to the other side. You know what I'm saying? And so that's to your point about anyone can take a 12-hour walk. You're missing the point. If you actually do the 12-hour walk, you reap all the benefits, right? It's not just knowing that you can, it's actually doing it and then learning from it. So totally. I love it.
Well, I hope you're going to do it, man. September 10th or another day. Put it on the calendar.
September 10th?
Yeah, September 10th. A lot of people are doing it that day. Are you in? You in?
What a special event, dude. I'll do a 12-hour walk.
Hell yeah.
I'm not going to – hold on. Can I pull up my calendar real quick? Because I don't want to commit if I can't commit. I want to see this. What I love, too, me being 30, is I feel like I'm at actually September 10th looks pretty dang good. Right there.
Perfect. Put it on the calendar right now. Let's lock that in. Everyone heard it right here. Andrew's doing a 12-hour walk on September 10th. Hopefully, many of you listening will join us. Like I said, 12hourwalk.com. Sign up. It's all of this is completely free. And like you said, it's meant to be that way. Is when I thought of this and when I came across this during COVID, I was like, amazing. Because people are always like, man, you went to Antarctica. You learned all these lessons. That's so powerful. Whatever. That's so cool. And of course, I love when people reflect that back at me, and it's humbling and great. But I was always like, but what about you, man? And like what I realized is you might be at a phase in your life right now where like, or you might not ever want to fly to Antarctica and freeze your butt off by yourself. I get that, man. Or you're just in a phase of life. You, like I said, kids, that's an important phase of life. My wife and I are starting a family right now as well.
Let's go. Yes.
But it's interesting, right? Because This is something you can do from your front door. This is not like, oh, hey, put it off, go make sure you're on some insane, beautiful nature trail on vacation next year. If you happen to be, great. But I'm actually telling people, do it from your front door for a reason. Fit this into your life, because the experience of the 12-hour walk in your neighborhood from your front door imprints. And I do like to make, because people ask this question a lot, you can do this in Manhattan. You can do this in a busy city. You can do this in the streets of LA, meaning your silence and your solitude is your own personal commitment to not listening to music, podcasts, etc. Ambient city noise, people walking past you on the street, as long as you're not stopping chatting up like every random person you see, like that still counts. That still is just as valuable as a 12-hour walk. So it's not as if you need to find some distant, far off place. But you also said something about the mundane that I want to come back to, because it's something I've thought a lot about. Kind of just, we're just like, getting through life, kind of grinding a little bit. There's time and a place for that. Look, man, I've been there plenty. But what I found is, one of the biggest limiting beliefs that I find of people is, I don't like being uncomfortable. And of course, I've taken discomfort to the extreme. Like I said, 40-foot swells in a 28-foot rowboat in the middle of the most dangerous ocean, wet, cold, sleep deprived, like whatever. That's a level of discomfort, physical discomfort, that few will feel. But here's the thing. People ask me a lot, hey, Colin, are you afraid of dying? Are you afraid of dying? And it's a legitimate question. I've thought about it a lot. And the truth is, yeah, man, I'm afraid of dying. I don't want to die. It's the last thing I want to do. But what I'm more afraid of is not living. And what I've come to think about is life, the experience of life on this spectrum of 1 to 10. So I think of 1 being like our worst days. Being burned in that fire, like I told you, that's a 1, man. That's the lowest of the low, right? We know what those 1s are. They're horrible. 10s are these high highs, right? The day your first child is born, falling in love, maybe you reach a mountaintop or an achievement that you worked super hard towards. You're gonna hit that 529 mile, man. That's gonna be a 10. You're gonna be like, hell yeah. Here's my 529 mile. I worked my butt out for this, right? Like these are these moments, these peak moments that feel really great. But what I've realized is that people are sitting around going, I want 10s. I want all these 10s. And then they go, but I'm not willing to have the 1s. And when I think about my 10s, think about crossing Antarctica solo for 54 days. I mean, there was a lot of dark moments of fear, being afraid, of being tired, of being hungry, of being alone. And I got to that 10 when I finished it and became the first person in history. But I realized I was experiencing a 10 in that moment, not in spite of my 1s, but actually because of my 1s, because of my willingness to accept that there was going to be some hardship, some challenge along the way. And I find that too often in our modern society, certainly with the modern conveniences we have, iPhones that can do a million things. You can call Uber Eats, and there's certain things that you can just that are just easier to do than they used to be, right? Back in the day, on some level, people can exist their whole lives in this zone of what I call the zone of comfortable complacency, just like this zone between 4 and 6, where it's like, you got a job, it's fine, like it pays the bills, you don't love it, you don't hate it, it's just like 5, every day 5, right? Or maybe you're in a relationship with somebody and it's not toxic, it's not abusive or anything like that, but like you're just like coexisting, right? You're just kind of like, yeah, like we cohabitate, we coexist, it's fine, like 5. And I'm not saying you don't want to have some 5 days. 5's a good place to recover, reflect, build. But a full life only lived in this zone of comfortable complacency, because you're hedging against any downside risk, any discomfort, anything outside of your comfort zone, results in what I think of a life not fully lived. And so the 12-hour walk is an example. There's lots of them, but it's an example of saying, hey, I'm going to do something that I've never done before. I'm going to do something that's probably different than everything. I've probably never spent that time alone in silence, given the fact that my phone's buzzing every 30 minutes and I got kids running around my house and I have friends and family and a busy life and I throw a podcast on when I'm in the car, right? That's normal. That's how my life looks too, by the way, on a normal cadence. But sometimes it's good to shake that up. And as you said before about the completion of the whole thing, you're talking about the 5:36 and going, okay, I'm still working towards this. Or the question about the 1 hour walk is, you're going to feel a 10 when you get back to your front door after the 12-hour walk. You might think, oh, I've got this after one hour. Oh, I could easily walk for 12 hours. But you got to go through the arc. You got to feel that little bit of tiredness. Or maybe in hour 8 or hour 9, some negative thought comes into your mind. You're looping on it for an hour and it's in your mind. But then all of a sudden you get some peace, or you resolve that part of your story in your own mind. That's the allowing yourself to feel those peak arcs, to feel the ones, to experience the tens, to step outside of your comfort zone, to feel deeply fulfilled. And if I'm passionate about a lot of things, but man, I am more passionate probably about that than anything else, because to me, that has been so important and such the key.
Dude, I love that. I love that. And if I could maybe rephrase it or reiterate at least, Drew Holcomb is a musician. We had the opportunity to sit down with him and his wife. He's talking about some of the tragedies he's experienced in life. And he's phrased it like joy and pain go hand in hand. You don't have one without the other. And so it's not you're able to enjoy the 10 because of the one, maybe, as much as I view it now as going through the one triggers the 10, right? It's totally. Like you get one because of the other, and they go hand in hand. And so the more, as some people call it, like self-imposed suffering, you push yourself through, the more you'll be able to endure. And I feel like the older I get, the more I appreciate that. And I feel like you are a living embodiment of that. I admire that about you. And I feel like, if you think about everything in life, whether it's engagement, when I propose to my wife, that's a 10 moment, but it's anchored by the this is going to sound harsh, but like the one of, okay, this is a lifelong commitment. Like there's something like serious and grave about that. And if I think about, yeah, exactly. It's like they go hand in hand. And I love how you approach that. I love how, the past 6 months for me has been super, I would say volatile as far as friend group, people who I didn't know were going through addictions, had committed suicide, all these different issues. And it's like, at this age, people's decisions are kind of panning out into tangible lifestyle differences. And I'm like, man, I just wish that you would, first of all, step back and reflect, which is part of the benefit of this 12-hour walk, where it's like, dude, whether you're into praying or meditating or just like thinking, like the 12-hour walk will unlock that. But you said the benefits of, I think it was in your TED talk, was the benefits of life, or a potential is unlocked for those who set goals. And it's like, dude, what if everyone you knew actually took time to evaluate, what am I good at? What am I bad at? What can I do with my talents? What goals can I establish for myself? It's like, I love your mission. I feel like you are talking to the people who want to accomplish something big. They're just kind of unsure. They're kind of aimless maybe at this point, even though they want something big. And you're leading the charge. So thank you. And I admire you and all the challenges you do. I am curious though. In Antarctica, Colin, do you feel like you having competition to walk against was beneficial or detracted from your experience? Could you have done it in a similar way without that?
No, it is a great question, and one that I have spent a lot of time on. I want to just real quick double back on what you said, which is, we can have these busy lives, quote unquote busy lives. We can fill our lives with, I got to go to work at this time, I got to drop off this, I got to pick up this, I got to da-da-da-da-da. And you can have a life full of to-dos, right? Like, it's not like you're sitting around by yourself aimless. But what ends up happening, I think what you're alluding to is, but people get far disconnected from purpose. Like, why am I even doing all of these to-do things? There's just some momentum and the rock is just rolling down the hill and you're just like, I'm going to keep doing the thing. And it's crazy. Like, well, this week's busy, next week's busy, this month, like 5 years go by like that, 10 years, like a lifetime can pass like that, right? And it's crazy how we don't take that moment to just check in with ourselves for like 12-hour walk. That sounds like a long walk. It's also one day. Let's think about how many days that you've spent in the last year that you can't even remember what you did. Like a lot of days, right? Myself included. You're like, I don't know what I did 3 Tuesdays ago. Like, I don't even know. this will imprint, and it will take, that is the value in such a way, what you're talking about, this pivot point, that you can take this moment and be like, wait, are the things that I'm doing the right things? And for some, my answer might be powerful and like, hell yeah, I love my life and I'm going to keep doing these 5 things. But you go, but there's this one thing that I like spend 10 hours a week on. Like, what am I even doing that? Maybe I need to make a shift, right? And that check-in with yourself, it sounds small like in the moment, but you amplify that. I love the metaphor of, if you and I are walking down a path, we both have a compass, and then each one of us turns 1 degree, you to the left, 1 degree, me to the right. Like, we're still walking beside each other for quite some time. But fast forward 10 years, we're both on the other side of the planet, because that 1 degree pivot, that 1 degree shift ultimately takes you in a vastly, vastly different direction. In terms of the competition piece, man, this guy was a badass of all badass. Like, a little context, which is, I planned this for a year. Like I said, people had attempted this crossing before, unsuccessfully, and it was kind of in the zeitgeist of exploration, is sort of like, is this even possible? And I thought, this might not be possible, but I want to push myself. I like setting big goals. Even if I fail, I'm going to learn something deeply important about myself. Just like you said, with all the challenges you've taken on, right? Like, you always learn something really cool. And I was like taking that to an extreme level here with this solo crossing. So I trained for it for a year, raised a sponsorship, getting ready to fly down there, etc. And then I find out then that there's another guy.
Oh my gosh.
It's not like we knew about this. For like, he has the same thing. He's planning it. It's normal in like the exploration community, if you're trying to break a world record or something like that, to not go tell everyone a year in advance, because it just draws a little bit too much attention to it. So you're kind of like doing your thing, low key, got your head down, your training, preparation. Then before you go, you announce you're going to try this thing. And I took an interview with the New York Times on the same day that he took an interview with the London Telegraph, and both of us are like, we're going to go down there to be the first people, whatever. And then those both articles come out and we're like, wait, I'm going down there. Well, what are your logistics? And it turns out, not that surprising when you think about it, but it's a hilarious coincidence, which is, there's like one guy with one plane that can drop you off on the edge of Antarctica. And there's also only one season when you can do this. It's the Antarctic summer. And summer still means it's minus 40 degrees. It's just not minus 100 degrees like it is in the Antarctic winter. We both, of course, call the same guy and ask him to take us on the same plane to the edge of the continent. Wow. So before I know it, I am literally sitting shoulder to shoulder with a British Special Forces badass who's done a bunch of big projects in Antarctica already. He's just got this like death stare looking me in the eyes, like, and he's like, there's a long lineage of British explorers, and there's not that many Americans that have done stuff in Antarctica. And he's like, what are you doing down here, son? It's got to be a Brit who cracks this journey first. And just like, death stare, like in the eyes. And I'll be honest, man, I write about this in my book, The Impossible First. I was super intimidated. Like, I was like, oh, shit. Like, it's one thing to be like, I'm going to erase history and see if I can pull this thing off. It's another thing with, like, this trained killer. You're getting dropped off beside him. Like, yo, like, oh, you want to battle me? Okay. And like I said, he kicks my ass on the first week. But I did, fortunately, regain the lead. The question about competition is very interesting, which is, the short answer is, there is no, I am certain that I would not have completed the crossing if he hadn't been there. And him and I, funny, on the other side of it, I actually waited for him. He completed it too a few days after me. So it also a successful crossing. Obviously I was proud to be first, but in the end, the competition, in my mind waned, and I was just like, dude, there's 7 billion people on this planet. There's like one other guy who's done this crossing and knows what this is like. Like, we should be friends. And we've maintained a nice, stable friendship over the years. I've seen him in London. I haven't seen him since COVID. Obviously, travel's been a little bit tough, but we WhatsApp, we chat from time to time, and we both agree that it was the competition that honestly got us to the other end. And the 12 hours, interestingly, kind of comes into that factor, which is, I never thought I could pull my sled more than 10 hours. The day I passed him, I just tried to pass him and went as hard as I could. And I went 12 hours. But then my wife was looking at the spreadsheet of my food and my supplies and the distance I was traveling each day. And she was like, yo, like, you're going to run out of food, like, if you don't somehow go longer each day. Turns out I was on my last bite of food on the 54th day, basically. And I started going 12 hours a day on day 6. And on day 54, I was on my last bite of food. So if I had gone 10 hours instead of 12 hours, multiplied by 50 days, that's 100 hours. That's like, I would have been short by, well over 100 miles. I wouldn't have made it. That's for sure.
Dang.
But the other thing too is that there were these insanely bad weather days, 50, 60, 70 mile per hour headwinds. It's minus 40 degrees outside. That's the kind of wind that will like knock you over. Whiteout conditions. You can't see 3 inches in front of your face. Just staring at my compass to try to route find. I never took a single day off when crossing Antarctica in 54 days. No matter how bad the weather was, no matter how brutal it was, I pulled for 12 hours a day. Because in the back of my mind, I was like, Captain Lou's one of the biggest badasses on the planet. If he goes and I don't go, like, what's going to happen? He's going to kick my ass, whatever. And so it turned out, and we both basically did the same thing. He never took a day off either. And again, once the intensity of the competition subsided, him and I are sitting around, a year after the thing talking about it. We both agree. We were like, man, you brought out the best in me. And I think awesome, that's true in life, right? Like on one hand, we think, oh, I don't want to have competition. It doesn't have to be heated. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I hate you, I hate this, whatever. But like, would Coke be what it is without Pepsi? There's a million examples of this, right? Whether that's in sports or in any sort of business enterprise or things like that. Like good competition actually brings out the best in you. And Captain Lou being out there forced me to be my best. I'll tell you one funny little anecdote at the end of this story is, on day 35, I passed Lou on day 6. Kicked my ass the first 6 days. We saw each other on day 6. I passed him, but just by a little bit. I could kind of see him in the distance for a little while, but I basically didn't see him after the 6th day. And on the 35th day, and every day I get up, I think, where is he going to be? I look over my shoulder. Is he going to pass me? I'm in this whiteout, like I said, he's in my head, but I never see him for like over a month, and I don't see anybody else. On the 35th day, I call my wife from my satellite phone. And I called her most nights to kind of just do a medical checkup. She's trying to check on my mental health and like ask me how many calories I ate every day. She's keeping all track of stuff for me in a spreadsheet and stuff like that. And I say to Jenna, I go, hey, Jenna, is this guy Lou real? She was like, what do you mean? And I was like, is there another guy out here? Or did I like make up a guy in my head that I think that I'm like fighting every day? And she's like, she tells me now, she was like, oh shit, Colin's like off the rails. He's completely losing his mind. But my wife's the coolest, most badass chick ever. And she just like cool as a cucumber. She's like, yes, Colin, Lou's real. There is another guy out there. But I'm telling you, I was so deep in my own head of like, I was like laughing. I was like, he's either real, which is cool because it inspires me to get in my tent every day and pull my sled further. Or he's fake, but like good for me. I made up a guy to compete with. It gets me out of my freaking tent every single day. So I was in some deep, deep places in the mind, man. Some not so healthy probably, but it was an interesting deep cut.
Dang. All right, last question. I'm sorry. I know I told you 45 minutes, but should you, for whatever reason, never do another? You've done some epic projects. The rowing across the passage, the Antarctic voyage, the 7 summits. Would you find contentment, you think?
Absolutely, man. 100%. And I say this very candidly. This is legitimately not me like, oh, hey, I hope you buy the book because I think you'll get benefit from it. I hope you take the 12-hour walk because I know you'll get benefit from it. But I end the book because I ask people, what's your Everest? What's your Everest? And even after I climbed Everest, I had to, what's my next Everest? Antarctica. What's my next Everest? The Drake Passage rowboat. What's, my next big project? I love it, man. I love being out there on these expeditions. I learn something new every single time. But I close this book by asking myself, and I say to the reader, because the book is really a dialogue with the reader. I say, well, look, I've been asking you this question this whole time. It's only fair that I answer it for myself. And genuinely, man, my next Everest is to inspire 10 million people to take the 12-hour walk. And that's because, like, it's not like I get $1 for every person that does the walk. This thing's free, man. Like, my website, free. Sign up for free. It's just literally, like, it's free. I'm saying just do this walk. Because I fundamentally believe the world will be a more interesting and more better place if people do take that moment to check in with themselves, strengthen their mind. And I love to say the most important muscle any of us have is the 6 inches between our ears. But you got to strengthen it. You got to take, you want to get big biceps and jack abs for the summertime, you go to the gym. Okay, the same applies to your mind. You want a strong mind. You want to be able to make sharp decisions about your future, your fulfillment, your community, whatever. You got to strengthen it. And the 12-hour walk is an exercise to do that. And I am deeply, deeply passionate about spreading that message. And so for me, I look at life in all a tapestry of experiences and chapters. Like I said, I love being outside. I love pushing my body to these extremes. And so fortunately, I don't have to make this hypothetical, decision that you're asking me to make, but it's a great question, which is, I think the question really at its fundamental core is, Colin, are you an adrenaline junkie and is just chasing the next like high off of this experience or this world record or this? And if the answer was yes, I would tell you yes. But the candid answer is, man, like when I think about those ones and tens, when I think about a life fully lived, it's the full tapestry of life, right? It's having children, it's growing old with my wife, it's setting big goals, and then those big goals can be, I'll tell you what, sometimes I think writing a book, and I've written 2 of them, is harder than walking across Antarctica alone. Like there is days and weeks and months where I'm like ripping my hair out of like, I'm stuck on a story or just it's not coming together in my mind. It's not coming to the page in that way. And so each one of these things, hey, I've never rowed a boat across Drake Passage before, but I'm going to set that goal and figure out how to row a boat. I'd never written a book before, but I set myself the goal. I want my book to be a New York Times bestseller. My first book was, and hopefully this one will be as well. But there's so many different ways to apply that mentality, physically, artistically, creatively, emotionally, that to me, it's just about trying to live life fully, man. There's so many different ways beyond an expedition.
I love that. Colin, thank you. Thank you for structuring this event for us and triggering a possible mindset, as you call it. I'm excited to see how you change the world and inspiring 10 million people. Also, I'm excited to see you do the family thing and raise kids who are also world changers and have this possible mindset. And I'm thankful you took the time to talk to us. So if you listening want to find out more about Colin and read his book called The 12-Hour Walk, you can find it in the description in the links. And my 12-hour walk may involve my own version of a 375-pound sled at times, which is me pushing a stroller with my 99th percentile children at times. But I'm planning on doing September 10th, Colin, so I'll see you there.
September 10th. I'll see you on September 10th, man. We'll throw your name on the website so we can track it, man. I'm looking forward to having you, everyone else listening. September 10th or any other day, sign up, take the walk. I promise you, you will not regret it. The ripple effect of positivity and strength on the other side has been amazing to see with everyone who's taken the walk. So I'm excited for you to join the movement.
Thanks for the time, Colin.
A pleasure.